the last tutorial we made this stone well. In this tutorial what we're going to do is actually make the framework to actually put our roof on. So I'm just going to deselect the well in our filters so it can't be selected. So nothing can be selected, and what we're going to do now is make our well. So I'm just going to add in a simple mesh, which is the cube, and we're just going to mainly use extrude to make this framework that our roof of our well is going to actually sit upon. So I'm just going to move my cube up there just so it's nice and visible, and then scale it down. And I'm scaling my cube down because we're going to make our framework out of our cube. So I'm just going to move this over to about here, and I'm just going to move it down in our scene by pressing G and Z just to actually move it down here. So we've got our well, scale this down a bit, and what we can do now is actually shape it. So I'm just burying it in my brickwork slightly because what I want is to use extrude to make our framework. So what we can do is we've got our cube, and we'll just extrude this along the normals like that just to make that kind of shape, and we'll do the same on the other side. Extrude along the normals and get it to about the same. Because our well is going to be looking quite broken up and things, we don't need to be exact with this because we can imagine that the actual well framework has just been made from the things that have been found on the forest floor. So I'll just extrude along the normal. I mean, the person who bought it might have actually bought it, but let's just G and Z and move that up to about there. So we can actually see that's probably the height of our roof. G and Z just to move it up to about there. So we've got our basic structure to start building our roof on. But what we'll do is we're going to actually just duplicate this piece here. So Shift and D and G and X just to move it across to about over there. So now we've made a cross beam. So we could actually just join these together with join like that. So now what I want to do is actually put a loop cut on either side of our framework here. So going to edit mode, select both top faces. In fact, now what we'll do is we'll select this face here and this face here, and we'll Control and R to put a loop cut on both pieces. Control and R on that side, right click to centralize, Control and R, Control and R, left click, then right click. So we've got our two sections there. So now what we can do is press the Alt key to select one section, Alt and Shift to select the other selection, and we can move these up in the air. So GG, and we'll move them up to about there. So we've got a block there and a block there, and what we can do is connect these blocks by just selecting both faces by holding the Shift key down, and then we can right click and we can bridge these faces, bridge faces. So we've made a cross beam, and what we can do now is we can actually Control and R, make a loop cut there, left and right click to centralize, loop cut there, left and right click to centralize, and what we can do now is move these up in the air by selecting both by pressing Shift and Alt, and GG, we can then move them up in our scene. I'm just now going to add a quick bevel to this, so Control and B, and if we actually set this to 1 and increase this, we can get ourselves this kind of setup, which then will allow us to actually make our cross beams. So scale this down, scale them down in the Z just until they're looking square, and then what we can do is actually select the faces by holding the Shift down that we want to extrude along our normals, just like that, and then right click and extrude these along normals. So quickly and easily we're starting to actually get our well shape. Control and R, left and right click, same on this right, Control R, left click, right click, and then hold the Shift down so we can move both of our rings, GG to move them along, and do it until it's about looking square on this face, and same on this side. So pressing the Alt and the Shift key down will allow us to select both rings, and GG until it's looking square on this face. Like I say, it doesn't have to be exact. And then what we're going to do is then bridge those two, right click and bridge faces. Same on this side, right click, bridge faces, and we can actually select this and bridge faces and bridge faces. So we've now got a very square framework to put our roof on. But what we'll do is now select all, Control and B, just to add a bevel, just to actually soften these edges. Out of edit mode, and you can see now that we've actually softened all of these edges. And what we can do now is actually add some loop cuts and make extra geometry so we can actually twist and bend just so our well shape doesn't look so uniform. So press tab key to go into edit mode, Control and R. I'm going to add some loop cuts to these, just 8 on that side, 8 on the top, and same on this side. And same on these. What we can do is, I don't like the way that runs to a point, but it's going to be hidden under our roof, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Control R, and I'm just adding 4 in this time, and same on here, and add 5 here. And as you can see, we're just adding different geometry to this, and it's entirely up to you how much geometry, but do remember that the more geometry you have, the harder it will be to render your object in Blender like that. So we've made our well, and let's add a bit of distortion to this now. So I'm just going to go onto face, select this, proportional editing, and I'm just going to G and Z. So you can actually change your influence ring to make your G and Z distortions in your model, and G and Z. And because we've added this extra geometry, what you can do is you can select different sections and rotate in the Z like this to add distortion to your model. Take off proportional editing, rotate in the Z. So as you can see, it's starting to look a bit old-fashioned. Rotate on the X this time, just to give it distortion, and you're just rotating it as you see fit in the directions you want, and of course moving them as you wish. Now, too much distortion looks odd, and you can go on point select and move points around as well. Enable proportional editing just to make it in your scene. And there we have it. We've got the rough shape of our well, and we've roughed it up a little bit. Like, you could spend hours actually roughing these things up, and it's entirely up to you which way you do it. And of course you can actually shrink, rotate, or straighten things until you get the actual desired feel to your model. So next what we're going to do is add in a mesh, and we're going to add in a simple cube, and G and Z, just move this because every well has a handle, and we're just going to make this now. So press the 3 key to look from the side, just to actually centralize it on our poles. And I think about there is where we want our crossbeam to be. Pressing the 3 key to look from the side, I'm just going to scale this down till it's about there. Then scale it on the X. And we're making our crossbeam that our actually rope for our well is going to actually come off of. And just going to G and Z just to move this up a little bit, because I think it's a bit too low. And every well needs a handle, so we're going to quickly model this, and we're going to use subdivision surface shortly just to actually change the shape. G and X just to move it across. So we've got in our well. I'm just going to extrude this along the face. E, extrude along the normals, just like that. Extrude along the normals to take it down, because everything needs an handle, like that. And Control and R just to put a loop cut in there. I'm just going to extrude this along the normals again. So we've got our handle there, but it looks a bit square. But we're just going to put a loop cut in here, roll our wheel once, scale this along the X, After we've disabled proportional editing, scale on the X just to actually make this wider because we want our handle to have a hand grip. I'm just going to go to there, Control and press the Alt key and select the whole ring round. Extrude along the normals, just to extrude it like that. So that's our handle. And if we're looking at our well here, they normally got a stopper on this side to stop it coming out, and a stopper on the other side to stop it coming out. So I'm just going to add the stopper, which is normally just a ring on the inside to stop the actual well stick from coming out. And we'll just select the go on to face select up here, select that ring there, extrude along the normals just to make our stopper. Same on this side, pressing the Alt key to select, just like that, extrude along the normals. So you want the subdivision modifier to work sharply, which you may do. You need to actually add an extra loop cut. Control, and I'm just going to add one there, because if you look at this, we've added the thing here. So in between these two, I haven't thingy, so it'll make quite a funny shape to it, and I'll just add the modifier by going on the wrench, and we'll search for the subdivision surface subdivision surface. And as you can see, where you haven't got a sharp loop cut, them two sharp loop cuts have meant that this has actually gone round in a circle. So if we shade smooth this model, shade smooth, as you can see, it looks very odd just before it gets here, and it looks quite odd up here where we've got our stoppers. So let's add a loop cut to there and move it closer until you think it's in the right place for yourself. Control R just to move one over there. Put another one closer to here, and as you can see, it's making a ring shape there. Control and R, and it's a nice way to model this because you can see the actual model changing as you actually add the loop cuts to things. So if we add one down here, we'll sharpen this up like that. Add another one just to sharpen it up on the other side. And same on the end piece here. Control and R. And depending how round you want your item to look, depends on the actual level in the viewport and the level on the render. But as you can see, we've set them both to 2, so that will look like that in our render, and that's our piece made for our well. Now we wanted to actually make a rope going round our well spindle here, and we'll do that just now. So let's add a rope. So add a mesh, and this time we're going to add a cube again. But what we're going to do is lose most of its geometry. So G and Z, let's go into wireframe mode. As you can see, we've got our cube there. And what I'm going to do is actually move it slightly below our spindle there. G and Z, just to take it to there, because I want it to go round I'm just going to move it on the X, just like that. So that is going to actually make our rope, and I'll just show you how we're going to do this. Press the tab key to go into edit mode, right click, and what we're going to do is merge vertices at center. So go into point select, right click, merge vertices at center, just like that. So now the old cube is just that one point because we've actually merged all vertices. So the 6 vertices that make up the cube, oh no, it's not 6, it's 4, isn't it? It's a cube. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's the 8 vertices that actually make up the cube have now been collapsed into one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually move our 3D cursor to the actual center of our spindle there. Press the 1 key, and we'll change it to the center of our spindle by holding the shift key down and right clicking like that. So that will enable our rope to actually go around our spindle. As you can see, it's slightly offset. So what we can do is go into the N and centralize it by going on to view, and you can see the 3D cursor location is there. So if I actually move the actual Y one, we can actually put it down to 0, which will center it in our spindle just there. As you can see, if you look from the side, you can see that the spindle is slightly offset, so we can actually align that, so we can actually center this point in the center of our spindle if we wish. Nearly there, -0.6, I'm just actually showing you how you actually move your 3D cursor. So it's at the point there in our center, and our cube slightly offset there as well. So I'm just going to actually select the cube, which is there, G and Y, just to actually move it so it's more or less there. So we've set up our point around our center there, and what we can do now is use a thing called, the screw modifier, and we'll add this screw modifier. So as you can see, we've still got our point selected there, and we're going to actually rotate it around our origin or our axis object. And our axis object at the minute is going to be this cube across the center, but we don't want it to wrap round in the Z. What we want to wrap it around is on the X. So as you can see, we've wrapped it around on our X, and at the minute it's just a circle. And if we actually move the iterations, this tells us how many times our thing will twist. But if we move this, we can actually make it twist up or down, and the actual size of the spiral is this that you actually can adjust here, which is of course the screw. So I'm just going to take this down till it looks about right, because we're going to add some thickness to our rope, and we'll just keep adding this over until we've got our simple rope shape. So once you've got our simple rope shape, what we can actually do is then apply this. Maybe make it a little bit longer and apply. Going to proportional editing, because the rope is going to be different shapes, so we can actually change the actual shape by going into the edit mode and actually selecting our center here, and we can actually go on proportional editing, in fact select the center, and we can actually make it that kind of shape that will make our rope. Right, as you can see, our rope there will be coming out of this end here, so we can now rotate it on the X, and I'm just going to rotate it until it's in the right place. I know it's not quite central, but we can re-centralize it in a second by looking from the side, and G, and just move it into there. And of course it's not going on the inside of our rope, so what we'll do now is add some thickness to our rope, and then we can maybe readjust if we need to, or change its scale. So we've got our spiral rope, and here we've got the point where the actual rope is going to actually hit the ground. So rotating the X, re-centralize it, maybe scale it down a little bit, G, just to move it into place. And what I'm going to do is actually select the end point of this by pressing the tab key, selecting this end point, and E and Z, just to actually put this down, because my bucket's going to hang from this point there, and go to the other end, because that's going to be where it ties off. So find the end point of the spiral, which is about there, and this would be tied off. So I'll take off proportional editing and G, and I'm just going to move it to the center of our point there, and just move these points so it appears to tie off to our pole. So we've made our rope there, and what we're going to do now is take our object. Let's just go out of X-ray mode just to make it that much more clearer. Object, and convert this into a curve. The reason we're converting it into a curve is if you actually convert something into a curve, this little smiley face appears here. And if we go down into geometry, what we can do is go to round and depth, and we can add some thickness to this. And quite easily and simply, we've made ourselves a rope, a little bit too thick, like that. And what we can do now is go into edit mode, and we can actually scale these down just to make our rope fit. So go into proportional editing, and we can actually change our influence ring, scale it down just to shape our rope, just to make it look that little bit more real. And because we've got the spiral still there, we can actually scale this down. A to select all, scale on the X, and just draw it together to get that kind of rope shape. Shade smooth, just make it look just like that. And I think the rope's a little bit too thick now, so I'm just going to do that, and that's it. We've made ourselves a little rope that we can hang our bucket on, and then of course just apply all modifiers. But the easy way we can do this is now just to convert this back. So object, convert back to a mesh. And as you can see, it's now converted it back to a mesh. So there's no modifiers actually applied to this. But we've got our rope with a little bit of a weird twist there where it's gone over on itself. But that is maybe what you want. There we are. So we've made ourselves a little rope. What we'll do now is we're going to add ourselves a bucket. So let's just go onto our well and we'll just hide our well. So make it so you can select your well, hide your well, oops, and then not select it. And we're just going to add in a simple bucket, and the simple bucket is going to be and we'll add in a mesh, and what we're going to do is add in the cylinder. As you can see, we've got 32 faces on our cylinder, and it's one of the few things that I would leave alone at what it stands. And I'm just going to move it down, and of course I've got proportional editing, so it moved everything down. So G, move it down. Let's just let me undo this a bit. I'm just going to add in our bucket, mesh, cylinder. Make sure proportional editing's not on, so it's not affecting anything. And I'm just going to move it down to about where it needs to be in our scene, and a bit of modeling. So we don't need a top face. So top face, X, and we're just going to get rid of only faces. Go to the bottom, scale it down to make it bucket shaped. Maybe a little bit of a shallower bucket, just like that. So we've got our bucket, but I want to add a ring like the actual metal of our bucket has been folded over on the edge. So I'm just going to select the bottom there, and then we're going to use the actual convert again. So select that, mesh. In fact, what we're going to do is actually select the bottom of the bucket by going up face. Select the actual top of the bucket as well. Alright, I've deselected that. So hold Shift and Alt. Right, start again. So what we're going to do now is actually select the top ring of the bucket, select the bottom ring of the bucket, and then we're going to actually duplicate these faces. So Shift and D will duplicate our faces. P will separate them off, so by selection, and then tab out of edit mode. And what we've got now is we've got the top and we've got the bottom of our bucket as rings. So object, convert to curves again, go into the smiley face, and we're just going to add a ring to them both like that. So it's made a top ring and a bottom ring to our bucket. Shade smooth just to see what it looks like. Shade smooth the bucket as well. So we've quickly made our bucket, and I'm going to quickly just then convert them. Object, convert back to a mesh, and we can glue these two together and call it bucket join. And we'll just rename this as the from cylinder to bucket, just like that. Every bucket needs an handle, so to make an handle we'll do this quite quickly, and we'll just actually take 2 points and just join them together. So take 2 points across the top of your bucket. I'll take that point there, take that point there, and I'm just going to put F to create a face, and then P just to separate off the selection, because I'm going to make this into the bucket. So G and Z just to move it up in the air like that, just to make it more evident. And what we can do now is we can add in some loop cuts. So I press tab key to go into edit mode, select the line, and then we can actually just subdivide this a number of times. And the number of times depends on how many points you want across your line like this. Let's just move it to one side so it's not behind the rope. So as you can see, we've got a central point there, and we can actually just go on to proportional editing and G and Z just to move it up. In fact, let's not put it on. G and Z just to move it up like that. And as you can see, we've got this actually, this comes out, but it's not a ring. So what you can do is you can actually decide what shape you want it to be. And I want this to be a sphere. So there you are, it's made it into a sphere, and we can just G and Z just until we get the actual desired angle handle shape like that. And then of course we can just go into object, convert to a curve, and we can use the actual thing we've already done by going into geometry and adding some thickness to our curve like that. So we've had our bucket handle, quite simply. And what I'm going to do now is actually convert it back to a mesh. Looking from the front, we can just move our handle down now into our bucket. Maybe scale it down on the X slightly so it's on the inside. Join them together, and as you can see, we've got a bit of graduation on our bucket there, so we can add a loop cut into this just to actually sharpen up some edges. Just put one at the bottom and one at the top there, and then move our bucket into place onto the end of our rope, just like that. And then of course unhide our well, and we've made our simple bucket in our well on the end of our rope. In next tutorial, what we'll do is actually finally put the actual roof onto our well, and we'll maybe colour this in as well, just as the final tutorial. Thank you for joining me on my channel. Please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe.